So, you ready?
Almost. And we're ready.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of Hamilton City Council, February 14th, 2024. A little after 6 o'clock. We're here in City Council Chambers at 345 High Street in Hamilton. We do have one public hearing this evening. It involves 244-unit senior living area on Gateway Avenue. Roll call, please.
Moeller,
Present.
Pullman,
Present.
Ryan,
Present.
Fear,
Present.
Vaughn,
Present.
Nab,
Present.
Lauer.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We're going to start off with an offering of prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, prayer being led by Councilmember Carla Fear. Please stand if you're able.
Heavenly Father, Ash Wednesday begins a period of inner reflection and examination. Let us continue to be ever mindful of our responsibility to the people we serve in Hamilton. We ask for your blessings and your guidance in the matters at hand, and ask that you would clearly show us how to conduct our work with a spirit of trust and cooperation. Please hear our prayers, spoken and unspoken. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have some special presentations this evening. First one is Black History Month celebration by Human Resources Director Gene Pope.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for your attention to council and to our wonderful mayor. I am Jean Pope. I'm the Human Resources Director for our great city of Hamilton. Today, we are going to be recognizing some amazing folks in the city of Hamilton. Turn it on. Oh, it is on.
Is that better? Oh,
Much better.
yikes. Okay. Mr. Mayor, if you'd come on down and help me present, sir, if you wouldn't mind.
Be an honor.
Thank you, sir. We're going to go backwards to forwards, so if you could
Backwards to
start with
forwards,
that.
sure.
So our first recipient is Officer Montez Lee. Officer Lee, if you'd come right on up here, please. So he has been with us here in Hamilton since 2015. He has contributed greatly to the community. And I'd like to ask his supervising officer, our chief of the police department, to say a few words at this time.
Thank you, Gene. So when I became chief in 2015, Montez was one of the first officers I hired. I had high hopes, but he's far exceeded those expectations. He's a great officer, and he's an even better person. I'm most proud of his efforts in community engagement, the work that Montez has done, reaching out through his coaching and participation in our youth events has been extraordinary. And I've witnessed firsthand his ability to connect with people in general, but most especially kids. And he's got a gift. I'm proud of him. I look forward to the rest of his career and what he accomplishes here. Thanks, sir. Thank you.
Officer Lee, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, just thank you. I want to say thank you to the city of Hamilton for giving me this opportunity to make an influence on a lot of people's lives, and thank you to Chief for taking the opportunity for giving me this opportunity to work here for the city of Hamilton. And thank you to the citizens of Hamilton for allowing me to serve you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Sir, is there anything you'd like to say?
First off, thank you for choosing Hamilton and staying here in Hamilton, because just reading your bio up there, you're a role model, and we thank you so much for that. We have a certificate here for you. City of Hamilton's Celebration of Black History, Certificate of Appreciation 2024. The following award is given to Montez Lee in honor of your continued service to the city of Hamilton and community. We thank you. Presented February 2024. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Thank you. Our next recipient is known throughout the city of Hamilton. I think she's on literally every board in the city of Hamilton, and we are so grateful for her presence. What people don't know is that Ms. Jarrett and I actually have a past that precedes Hamilton. When my children were little, she taught them praise dancing and was an amazing teacher. And so now if Miss Angela Jarrett would please come on up. So Ms. Jarrett not only holds and owns businesses in the area, but she takes a special pride in contributing to the area in various ways by her community service and other endeavors. Would you like to say a few words?
I would just like to say thank you for the recognition, giving me just, coming out, moving to Hamilton, and just being a part of Hamilton. I love it. The work that I do in Hamilton, and I tell you, this is just the beginning. I'm pressing on. So I want to be a light in Hamilton, or continue to be a light, and I just appreciate this honor.
Thank you so much for all the work that you do, Ms. Jarrett. Mr. Mayor?
You're on our agenda tonight, too. Is that correct, for Hamilton Civil Service Commission? Are you on the agenda tonight? Mm-hmm. It's another board.
Just your application. You don't
Oh, okay, I don't do anything, okay.
Not yet.
Not yet. I look out and I see the 17 strong people smiling big. So I know you work so much with them, and that's so important to our city of Hamilton. So, and just to see you smiling and all the folks out there smiling, this is just right to recognize you. Okay, I got it open. City of Hamilton's Celebration of Black History. Certificate of Appreciation for 2024. The following award is given to Angela Jarrett in honor of your continued service to the city of Hamilton and the community. We all thank you very, very much. Presented February 2024.
Thank you, sir. We have one more recipient this evening. And I have to say, all of the recipients are amazing in the work that they do for the community at large. And we are honored to be able to give our thanks and gratitude to each and every one. But without further ado, our last recipient, but not least, even though she is miniature in stature, I love that there's somebody shorter than me, Ebony Brock. Mrs. Brock was just named the executive director of the Booker T. Washington Community Center. She was instrumental in keeping the community attached to our young people during the pandemic. She got iPads for them, created spaces for them to eat, for them to do homework. She continues to reach out to the community and our younger generation, and we are certainly blessed to have her here. Would you like to say a few words, Ms. Brock?
Sure. That's so official, Miss Brock. She never calls me that. It's always Ebony or Little Sis. So Miss Brock is, we'll be professional. Thank you. This is a little bit uncomfortable because I'm typically the person that is supporting other people and pushing other people forward while I prefer to stay in the bag. But honestly, I was telling my mother, if you would have seen me 5 years ago, when I came back home, I was a shell of an individual, having gone through a tumultuous divorce with absolutely nothing. I didn't know what life was going to look like. I honestly didn't think that I would live. So to see this happen right now and my son sitting in the front row, and the doctors told me that I would never have a child. So all of this is very surreal. I tell people that I get to do my job, not I have to do it. It really is a passion, it's a ministry, and I live by the motto that I hope that my life is proof that God is good. It is a blessing to be able to work with our children and pour into them, because the goal is that they will be the next Montez. They will be the next Miss Jarrett. I can't wait to come back and see which one of my kids is going to be the executive director at BTW. Because that's what this is about. We get so we can give. We learn so we can teach. So thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor?
Sometimes you don't thank and recognize people enough, so it's an honor to recognize and thank you. And again, I saw Gina out there smiling, and more people are smiling in here. What a great celebration do we have here of our Hamiltonians. Again, City of Hamilton Celebration of Black History, Certificate of Appreciation, 2024. The following award is given to Ebony Brock in honor of your continued service to the City of Hamilton and our community. We thank you, presented today, February 14th, 2024. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of our recipients. The work that you do does not go unnoticed, and we wanted to give you your flowers today. Thank you again for everyone for attending the ceremony, and thank you, sir, for aiding us. You're welcome.
A round of applause for all the recipients. Our next special presentation is Dave Jones presenting our 2023 year-end Finance Department update.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Tonight we've got an opportunity to go over the 2023 actuals compared to 2022. We focused on the general fund. We spent a lot of time looking at budget, and this is a good opportunity to look at actual to actual. Some takeaways for tonight: income tax. Income tax has been very strong. You'll see up there it says all funds, and we go over this a lot in the budget presentations, but we have 3 funds that are recipients of our income tax. The general fund gets 77.5%. We've got a public safety and health fund that gets 12.5%, and the general fund capital and debt gets 10%. It's a lot easier to think that the general fund, the 77.5, and the public safety and health get combined, that's 90%. 90% goes to the general fund, 10% goes to the cap and debt fund. You can see 23 income tax, all funds, was $37,792,000. We look at 22 coming just in over $35 million. It's a $2.6 million increase, or 7.4%. We also had some problems. Rita had some software issues where we had about $500,000 of tax revenue that normally would have been reported in December of 23 that you'll see reported into January of 2024. So January 2024 tax receipts were $5.2 million, which was about $679,000 over January 2023. We like to look at the unencumbered general fund balance. It came in at $8.45 million. However, if you factor in that $500,000, we were at about $8.953 million at year end. The general fund highlights, I tried to stay consistent with the budget presentations, and this is the pie chart we use in the budget presentation. So if you see the actual revenues up at the top is $59.8 million. We started 2023 with a structurally balanced budget of $55.4 million. And probably one of the key takeaways from this is 67.6% of the revenue comes from income tax, utility reimbursements, and the levy funds. And the utility reimbursements, those come through the form of chargebacks. Won't get too in-depth to that tonight. This next slide is a bar graph of how our income taxes went over the last 4 years, trending upward. It's trended upward for a lot more than those 4 years. And in 2024, we budgeted all funds $35 million. So income tax is very healthy. This is the expenditure side. Again, it's the pie chart that we showed during the budget presentations. The actual came in at $62.7 million. Public safety came in at about 61% of that. However, we made 2 large transfers. One was to fund Fire Station 26, a one-time transfer out of the general fund, and the other one was to pay off a note that U.S. Bank holds of $1 million. If you factor out that $3.3 million, public safety accounts for about 65% of the general fund budget. And without those 2 transfers factored in, we were at about 59.4%. So on this slide and the slide after this, these are departmental comparisons. And what I did, I wanted to give you guys an apples to apples comparison because since the pandemic, we've had a lot of ARPA money. We've had ARPA money come in that we've paid public safety bonuses with. So we spent some time and we stripped back all that ARPA money out of this to try to be more of an apples to apples comparison. So when I get to the next slide, the grand total is not going to tie to that $62 million, but I thought this might be easier, to look at when you're looking at a comparison. On the left-hand side, we've denoted, increases of more than $100,000 and 10%. I'll go through some of the other smaller increases. City council's up. 1 member picked up health insurance. Municipal court, you can see on the left-hand side, it's some new computer software they bought in 2023. Building, they added an FTE in 2023. Law, outside legal services were down. HR, 2 positions added about halfway through 2022. They were there for all of 2023. Oops, sorry about that. The finance department, Rita, collection charges were down about $400,000. Which is a very good thing. Let's see here, going on down. I'll skip down to the special appropriations. That's timing differences, payments to the Butler County 911 dispatch, and also the first payment to St. Clair Township was made in 2023. And there at the far bottom left, those are the 2 transfers I referenced. Public safety, police and fire, those are contractual increases and benefits. A 3% contractual increase will save roughly about $400,000 annually for each force. Then you've got increases and decreases, and I'll try to give an example to maybe help out with that. We budget at a full complement for each force for the entire year. And depending on how well they stay staffed at that complement greatly affects whether that is going to increase or decrease year over year. So that's going to play into a lot of the public safety differences. And there wasn't big differences when you stripped out the ARPA money from public safety comparing 22 to 23. You see the 12.86% in the bottom right grand total increase from 22 to 23. If you back out that $3.3 million in one-time transfers, that increase is 6.2%. So I know that's a lot of numbers. If you guys want to delve into any questions now on that, I'll be glad to answer those. If not, we can do them at the end. So this next slide, that's the general fund unencumbered balance. You'll see the expenditures include encumbrances because we're trying to get down to the unencumbered balance. So we have to include encumbrances with expenditures to get there. Again, it's 8.45 million. Go back to the very first takeaway. We add in the $500,000 timing difference. You're up really close to $9 million. We still have the resolution that we try to follow in the GFOA guidelines with the city policy. 10% of revenues is what's mandated, and we go over this each budget season. It's a resolution from 2012. That's at $5.9 million. So our ending fund balance unencumbered is well above the council resolution. So the next slide is
Dave, can I interrupt you just for 1 second?
Yes, sir.
Just going back to the 2012 resolution, the reason that the 10% was selected was once we hit 10% in unrestricted reserves relative to the annual operating expenses, then we created a capital projects account and we swept that money into that capital project account. So that was like a comfort, that 10% was like a comfort level. And then we were, by that policy, then we had the ability then to move those excess funds into a capital project account. Just wanted to.
Yeah, and thank you. So it was actually the Budget Stabilization Fund, which currently holds $1.2 million. So we have swept money in there. And you'll see coming up here, this is our general fund ending unencumbered fund balance. And the orange portion, that is the Budget Stabilization Fund. And we're lucky we had that because the decrease from 22 to 23, that was the investment in Crawford Hoyne for the $3 million forgivable loan. I mean, that could pay dividends for decades to come. But we were able to utilize that Budget Stabilization Fund to make that investment. These are our capital expenditures. So going back to the beginning again, when I said 10% of the money goes to the general fund's capital and debt fund, this is what the money gets spent on. And on top of that, you'll remember that we've been spending a lot of the community development block grant money on fire equipment. In 2023, we spent $550,000 of the CDBG money on fire equipment. So that's a big list. I won't go through it, but you can see the belt line, the fire equipment, B Streets improvement. We pay debt service. It's the capital and debt funds. So we pay debt service out of here. The band roll, that is that Ohio Municipal Access Program that you guys approve at the end of each year. The majority of that went to fund the Criminal Justice Center. So with that, I know it's a lot of numbers. It can be confusing with accounting, but if you have any questions, please ask.
Any questions? Were you surprised by anything in 2023?
I was pleasantly surprised as the year went on. I wasn't necessarily surprised at year end, but as the year was going on, it was nice to see that tax collections are staying strong. And even I referenced the $500,000, the timing difference. Still, January 24 to January 23, we're up almost $180,000. So hopefully we stay strong in 24 with tax collections because that drives the general fund.
Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Dave, thank you. As we go through the budget process in November and everything then is brought over into December, but thanks for the summary tonight in showing in more simple terms for understanding all the purposes and the line items we go through in budgeting and things like that. But the bottom line is the strength of the city, how well we're doing, how we're performing, the monies that are moved, as Joshua carried, that over 10%, and we're able to use those money and utilize them properly and things. So thanks for the finance update. You guys are doing a tremendous job. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for your analysis, Dave.
Yep. Thank you.
That takes care of our special presentations. We now go to audience of citizens. Individuals who wish to make comments may speak during this part of the agenda or wait for when the item is specifically up for vote on council floor. Individuals who intend to address council are required to sign this blue public speaking book. And I believe we have one person to speak at audience of citizens, and he is allowed up to 5 minutes. Jim Loneman.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Let's one job here.
submit to our city clerk, please.
Anyway, back last fall, I got to early summer, a ticket for actually, when I moved to her place over on Franklin Street, from where I was over on, I can't remember where the street was. But I pulled on there's actually a stop sign, turn right on the street where it's one way, or turn right on the wrong way, on the street. The cop had to be right there. I said, well, I'm sorry, that's my story at all. You know, I mean, there's times, you know, when there's a new place you move out and then recognize the roads and I get, you know.
Did you bring this to us a couple weeks ago or a couple meetings ago? Is this the same incident from?
Basically, yes. Basically,
Okay.
but, see, when I tried to get hold of the chief of police and he wouldn't even contact me.
I believe there's a procedure on that. And I think we talked to you about the procedure, but I remember hearing about this ticket, and I believe you should contact somebody in the police department if you have any kind of a problem with it. But
Yeah.
I know you didn't like getting the ticket because nobody likes getting tickets.
No, I'm telling you, man, I admit I was wrong, but he wouldn't even listen to my story, you know.
Well,
That's being like a pretty bad cop, you know.
I would not say that means a bad cop. That's an officer who's got something else I'm sure he's got to address after addressing the situation, which, again, he did what he had to do, and he had to address, I'm sure, other calls, okay?
Also, I'm back in the wintertime when I put on another cop, and she was, I was going 50 miles per speed. I was trying to catch this car in front of me because until the guy that brake was out. And I told him the situation. She listened to the story, and she let me out. That's pretty nice cop. You know.
Jim, I thank you for your analysis. I would say that we've already addressed this issue, and next time you come to our council chambers, maybe you'll say something good about our pothole situation as we start to fill things that we can fill at this point in time.
Also, one pothole, actually, at 544 Franklin Street, I'd call it there's like a alley right there. It's a big one right there.
Okay.
It happened today, I saw it.
I know they've been addressing several of them, a lot of them around town, and there's some really pleased citizens the fact that we are addressing things in February. So I'm sure Mr. Engel wrote down that location, and I'm sure he and his team will take a look at it, okay?
Thank you very much.
Hey, Jim, was that 544 Franklin you said?
Yes, 544
Okay,
Franklin.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Have a good night.
You too.
Dave, make sure Rich writes that 544 Franklin down.
Okay. We now go to the consent agenda. That's all staff reports, all caucus reports, meeting minutes, an information report from December 2023 financials, and information report on December 2023 investments. So we're going to go to the committee of the whole. That gives us an opportunity on council to ask questions, provide direction, comment on the various reports. I'll accept the motion that the regular meeting be recessed and the committee of the whole take place.
So moved.
Second. Motion made by Vice Mayor Pullman, seconded by Councilmember Ryan. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion is carried. It is 6:30. Okay, you going to lead us in this, Mr. City Clerk?
Absolutely. Our first presentation will be from a member of our finance department, Ms. Tamika Hedrington.
Good evening, excuse me. Good evening, Council. I am presenting on the fiscal year 2024 through 2025 CDBG and home funds. The annual action plan is updated annually to update and make plans for community development block grant and home investment partnership funds each year, and we are approaching the fiscal year 24-25, which begins May 1st. Again, I stated we're here for the annual action plan. In putting the annual action plan together, it requires a number of moving parts. We gather feedback from the community. We've done this year a little bit different from last year and focus more on having public meetings and information sessions. But we've also done an email survey, which we sent out to approximately 600 persons. We also placed that survey on the city's website, and we've kept it open, mainly because the funds have not been approved by, or the final allocations have not been provided by HUD yet. So we figured we leave the survey open until final allocations come available, because we don't have final CDBG and home numbers. In August, we had 3 public meetings, 2 in the afternoon and 1 in the evening, and then we also had a technical assistance meeting also. At that meeting, we just go over applications and the application process and help our subrecipients with any questions or concerns they may have regarding the funds they plan to apply for or may be receiving. Here's a copy of the survey. We actually released the survey in Spanish and English. And we can adjust it to other languages, which we've also kind of began doing this year as needed and requested. In regards to CDBG, you have 3 national objectives that have to be met, and it has to benefit low and moderate income persons, aid in prevention of slum and blights, and then also meet an urgent need. And those urgent needs are defined when we have our public meetings. There are 7 eligible activities for CDBG, and they include purchase of property, public facilities improvements, demolition and clearance of dilapidated buildings, and public services, emergency minor home repair, economic development, and planning, design, and program administration costs. We based our CDBG and home numbers off of last year's numbers because, again, we don't have final allocations yet from HUD. It's just kind of out there until they tell us, which will hopefully be before we normally submit, which is March 15th. But we can't submit until they submit those numbers, so we'll continue to stay in limbo. So we made we budgeted out our CDBG numbers at the same number as last year, which was $1,307,464. This year, based on applications and public feedback, you'll see the following activities have been identified and recommended for funding. They include some housing projects. You'll see our public facilities are a little different this year. We'll be giving some funds to Serve City as well as the YMCA for some of their public facility improvements. Here's a number of our public services activities. Just in short, we'll be committing funds to some children programs, adult services, transportation, mentoring programs. So a very diverse list of public services this year, which is nice. Here's a breakdown for home, which again has to be devoted to housing. So we'll once again do the down payment assistance program, also some acquisition and rehabilitation for additional rental housing. If approved by City Council, which that should say, we hope to go ahead and forward this to HUD for their approval. Again, their approval will be once they release annual allocations, which will hopefully be soon, and then I'll be back in the fall to take and approve those funds. Any questions?
Questions? Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. Have a good evening.
Mr. Mayor.
Please.
I just want to throw this out and thank TV Hamilton and Steve for putting this together, because I know it makes it so much easier even for me to go home and rewatch the meetings and be able to take the notes and follow the charts. And so thank you again for doing this.
Next up, we'll have 2 presentations from our Finance Director, Mr. Dave Jones.
Good evening again, Mayor, members of council. Mr. Williams is coming up, and we are addressing some pothole issues with proactive paving. So the Public Works Department is going to start paving smaller neighborhood streets in conjunction with our annual concrete repair and resurfacing program. And to do that, we're going to lease this asphalt milling machine that you see up there. The milling machine has a conveyor system that just directly loads these millings into a dump truck. My guess is it probably pushes the dump truck down the street and loads the dump truck up, so it's going to save a lot of staff time. The lease payment was appropriated in the 2024 appropriations ordinance. The reason we need this ordinance is a capital lease is considered debt and requires council approval. So it's a 5-year lease. I got a tax exempt rate at US Bank of 5.02%, and I've got that rate locked in until March 25th. And you can see the total cost of the machine is a little over $283,000. I had Mr. Williams here in case you had any questions on the paving program, but again, we're proactively addressing potholes throughout the city with this process.
Just want to say that'll bring a lot of joy. And thank you, the city team, everybody was involved in this, because your vision to pave our streets using our own people and leasing some equipment that'll help our own people get this job done right. That's great. Congratulations. Thank you so very much. Any comments on council?
Mr. Mayor.
Please, Councilmember Ryan.
Couldn't agree with the mayor more. This is exciting, and I think the residents can be really appreciative of this. As you know, it's a pretty high priority to get these streets fixed. Do we know when we are going to start this year? Do we have a date?
So Vice Mayor Ryan, am I correct?
Wow.
You're no longer Vice Mayor. Oh, Councilman.
We fired.
I apologize. My name is Jim Williams, Public Works Director for the city. The idea is that's why we're trying to get this capital money in place for this lease, because the sooner we can get it on order, the sooner it can come to the city. We also have a paver that is to be delivered as well. We're hoping that we can get this in place by June. The lead time on dump trucks, capital equipment such as this, is unbelievable. But in essence, the whole idea is we can get it in by June, then we'll have the summer months, and then of course the fall to get as many streets done as we'd like to try to get done. We have targeted, and I can give you a list real quickly if you don't mind.
Sure.
Weinman, and these are the names of the main streets, but there's a point-to-point on each one. Peregrine, Sandalwood, Barbary Drive, Cornell, Sunset Court, Hilda Avenue, Cleveland Avenue, and Cleveland Avenue in 2 locations between Ray Avenue and Gray Avenue to Webster Avenue. So, and these, we try to use criteria in the selection of these streets, and this is not in any specific order, but it's based off the Pavement Condition Index, a PCI score, 0 being terrible, 100 being good. Underground utilities conditions, 311 requests, which is how we get notified for potholing. ADA ramp costs, because in essence, when we do work, maintenance such as this, we have to put in the American Disability Act ramps for citizens to be able to traverse those curbs. Engineering plans on the street, we work closely with the engineering department, which is Mr. Rich Engel, and all the capital projects associated with full-blown, full-depth reclamation, which is a much more extensive paving project than we do. Because we're mill and fill, basically 2 to 3 inches off, 2 to 3 inches back on, try to make the road, the pavement black and smooth. And so, in essence, this is something that we're trying to do as quickly as possible so we can get to as many streets as possible. But in some cases, these streets need the full depth reclamation. And then, of course, the cost of the asphalt right now, which is unbelievable. Again, we're dealing with some of the inflationary numbers of that. And then if the street is a high traffic or low volume traffic condition. So those are all the factors we use to determine the streets and the locations. We've identified these streets in coordination with Pat Yingling, Rich Engel, and his team. And we're going through extensive training on our personnel. This is the first time. Of course, we've done smaller paving jobs with a smaller paver, but something as extensive and as elaborate as this we've never done before.
Okay.
And so we're looking forward to it as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Vice Mayor Pullman, do you want to say anything?
I do. So June through what about November you can pave, you're thinking?
As long as we have these kind of weather conditions like we're having now, if we had the equipment now, we would be at work. But in essence, that's the goal. From June through probably maybe mid-November, and until the asphalt plants close.
Okay. Second question I had was on the cost of the lease at $283,523. I'm sure we have to repair anything that breaks.
Yes.
So are we equipped to do that? Do we have to send that back out?
Now, we have mechanics, of course, that are getting trained on the equipment. So if we have to replace parts or components, of course, we'll be giving the manufacturer feedback now. I mean, in essence, this thing, as long as we maintain and keep it clean, it should work fine. But if things break prematurely, then we're going to hold them accountable for that.
I was going to ask, do we have some kind of warranty on it during that time?
We do.
Okay,
And
because
so-
I mean, if we buy a lemon, are they going to, fix that? But, things happen.
Yes,
So-
sir.
All right.
Yes, sir. This isn't the first time that we've leased some capital equipment, but in essence, this is the first type of milling equipment that we've purchased.
Okay, but they're being trained on it, so we can do it at our own department, right?
Yes, sir.
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Matt.
Jim, with this piece of equipment, and as you said, it'll load the truck in front of it as it runs down the street. Do you have any idea of the width of the miller that's on the front of that?
It can be varied based off the street width. And so in essence, say if we've got a normal street, which is about, I would say 10 to 20 feet wide, because we got some like Hanover is very tight.
Yes.
And so in essence, it can be variable.
Thank you.
And so the dump truck, some of the dump trucks that we have will receive the milled asphalt, and then of course it'll go dump, and then another truck will come and it'll go dump. Where normally we would have to get those pavings up ourselves manually, get them into the dump truck. This is going to be much more efficient, much quicker. A couple of years back, we did Gerald Avenue with a rented miller, and I was amazed at how quickly we got it done.
That's why I asked Jim, just so we know that, again, as you said, the street to street, and not necessarily the length of the entire, for instance, Cleveland, that could be 3 miles long, perhaps, and we're going to do sections of that, as you pointed out, but importantly, that those bad sections scaled from 0 to 100 are going to be completed, because we're getting calls all the time on many of those streets that you named tonight. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No one else on council? Questions for Dave or Jim? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming up. So before I jump into this next caucus report, I have one comment on Tamika's caucus report on the CDBG funds. I don't know if you noticed, but we have $500,000 of CDBG money dedicated for paving and repairs to Greenwood Avenue. We're going to purchase the fire equipment this year out of the general fund, and we're dedicating $500,000 of CDBG money towards that this year also. So we're being very proactive, trying to get the streets paved. My next caucus report, though, is on purchasing, bidding, and threshold changes. As Jim mentioned, inflation is driving costs way up. Over the summer, the state addressed that with House Bill 33. The General Assembly passed it, and the governor signed it into law on July 3rd of 2023. What it'll do is it'll allow us to change our codified ordinances, sections 169 and 171, which deal with purchasing and public bidding requirements. Right now, the public bidding requirement is at $50,000. We're going to take that up to $75,000 before we have to publicly bid, a good, and it can increase 3% annually. Also, along with that, down at the bottom part, you'll see the administrative directive. That's just more as an FYI. That takes no city council action, but we're upping the thresholds on getting quotes. Before, we had to get a quote on anything over $2,500. We're moving that up to $7,500, and then 2 informal quotes from $10,000 to $75,000 almost. Any questions on that one?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next up for agenda item number 3 will be a presentation by our planning director, Ms. Liz Hayden.
Good evening, City Council and residents of Hamilton. I am talking tonight about requesting your approval to go after a Safe Routes to School grant for new sidewalks on Grand Boulevard. The last part of Grand Boulevard in our city limits actually doesn't have sidewalks. And also, there is not a signalized place for pedestrians to cross Grand, which is really important because we have Crawford Elementary on one side, Garfield Middle School on the other side, and the Boys and Girls Club. So that's the project that we're proposing to seek grant funding for this year. The grant goes up to $500,000, and the project cost that we're proposing is actually $512,000. So while typically there is no cost to the city, there is some direct cost to the city in this case. And then there's also the staff time associated with implementing the project. Do you have any questions?
Just got a comment. We have done so well with that Safe Routes money. I mean, different neighborhoods all across our city, and this is an excellent one to work on next.
If I think I'm speaking correctly. I think the budget for the Safe Routes to School program is for the whole state is $5 million, and we've been consistently getting $500,000 every year. So we are bringing a lot of a chunk of that money to our community and making some big changes by our schools.
That is great.
Mr. Mayor,
please.
Just one question. Liz, what's the timing on the grant? When might this occur if it's awarded?
Like a very long time from now. I think it will be in like 3 years.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to make sure people didn't think it was going to happen this spring.
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we'll have a verbal report for agenda item number 4 from our police chief, Craig Buchheit.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. The city and the FOP have come to terms on a collective bargaining agreement, 2 collective bargaining agreements that are set to expire at the end of the month. Highlights of that agreement include a fair, reasonable across-the-board increase for all officers, market rate adjustment for our frontline officers to aid in recruitment and retention. Also importantly for the city, the terms include a 50% cut in the rank differential, between the first 2 ranks in the department. And then finally, it opens up a promotional path for senior patrol officers, which will ensure the strongest pool of applicants for supervisory positions. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up will be a presentation from our Director of Engineering, Mr. Rich Angle.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, citizens of Hamilton. We have traditionally taken advantage of working with ODOT under their urban paving program, which they use to pave state routes within communities like Hamilton. So this is for Millville Avenue, where the ODOT and the city would share in the construction cost. We will manage the project with our own engineering staff, just to make sure that it's done to our expectations. Even though we're doing it, ODOT is requesting an LPA agreement, local public agency agreement between ODOT and the city. The estimated ODOT share is $537,000. Estimated city share is a little over $1,040,000. And the project limits are from the Westerly Corporation line on Millville, just west of Rockford Drive, to the railroad. And this is showing it from the Westerly Corporation line going to the east. And then this is the completion of it at the railroad tracks. We're asking your consideration to allow us to enter into this LPA agreement. Do you have any questions?
Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
Thanks. Okay, and then I'll cover the last item on the caucus agenda. Let's see. Hello, Mayor, members of council. This is a liquor permit application for the Family Dollar retail store on, it's 4105 Pleasant Avenue. You've had an opportunity to review this caucus report at our previous city council meeting, which we adopted a motion to table that item. I've also sent a request for an extension for an additional 30 days for this liquor permit for us to have additional time to review the permit. And since the past city council meeting, I've gone back to applicable city departments such as building, fire, and health to add an extra review for any potential objections to this permit. And based on my correspondence with those departments, they don't have anything that would be grounds for an objection to this permit. So from those three departments, we don't really have much, but I am open to any questions, or our law director is open to questions about this permit.
Let me ask you a general question. Are renewals every year? Is it an every year process? So if they decide to renew this, I mean, it's a yearly review, is that correct? Of the liquor permit?
To me or her.
Does it make any difference?
Mr. Mayor, we have an opportunity every year to object to renewals, if that's the general question that you're asking.
That's my basic general question.
Yes.
Is that like
every year we have an opportunity to decide if we want to raise objections.
usually June of every year, or is it a calendar year June, or is it a year from the date that they get the permit?
There's a standard time in which we can decide whether or not we're going to object to any and all permits. I don't know the exact date, but it is coming up soon.
So we do receive a notice from the Liquor Commission of those specific dates, usually.
Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Pullman.
Isn't there a rule that it's a 500 foot from a school or church or whatever that we can't grant a liquor permit, or that we should look at that? And if I do my Google map correctly, and as a crow flies, not going up the street to get to it, but the property lines touch, it's about 374 feet from property line to property line. How do they figure that?
Mr. Mayor, if
Please.
I may.
Yes,
so,
please.
there is a provision in the Ohio Revised Code that provides for the basis of an objection if it is within 500 feet.
Okay.
This facility is within 500 feet of the facility, and notice has been given to the school board, and it's my understanding that the school district has objected on the basis of that. It would have to be the school, a church, a library, a public park, or a township park that would have to request a hearing to object on that basis. So the city of Hamilton as municipality is not covered. So for example, if we had a public park, a city of Hamilton park, we perhaps would receive a notice and then be able to object under that provision. But based upon this facility, we would not be one of those cover facilities that would be objecting based upon that 500-foot.
Okay, but the school board or a church or something like that would be the ones that we'd have to listen to those objections, correct?
The city of Hamilton would not be, but they would receive a notice from the Liquor Commission to object. It's my understanding the city manager's office has received confirmation that the school has already objected on that basis.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Fear.
But we don't have to take that into consideration, right? Is what you're saying? Our city departments have certain things, excuse me, that they look for, and they grant based on that. So just because the schools have an objection, we don't have to take that into consideration, do we?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is their objection to raise.
Thank you.
And the law specifically states that it's if only those entities raise an issue, can a hearing be requested on that basis? So we don't even have the basis to object on those grounds.
So there'll be a public hearing because of the objection of the school administration, or not? I don't know how that works.
There will be a hearing. I don't have a lot of information about what the school district has objected, but if they have objected, there will be a hearing, and it will be likely either in the city of Hamilton or it will be in Columbus.
So refresh my memory, how did we even know that the school, I mean, why is this a discussion on our part? How did we know the school was objecting?
It's my understanding at our last council meeting that the city manager said that the school was objecting, and then we, after the meeting, we followed up to get confirmation of whether or not the school had objected, and we received that.
You can blame that on me, but yes, the school superintendent called and it indicated they had objected or in the process of objecting.
Okay. All right, great, thank you.
And I asked that myself as well, so it's confirmed and, okay. Any other questions? Okay. I'll set the motion that the committee of the whole be closed.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Councilmember Vaughn, seconded by, which one of you guys did that?
We sound like Brian.
Seconded by Councilmember Ryan. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion is carried. The time the committee of the whole closed was 6:57. I'll set the motion that the regular meeting be reconvened.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Nab, seconded by Councilmember Ryan. Roll call vote on that motion, please.
Moeller.
Yes.
Pullman.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Nab.
Yes.
Fear.
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
Lauer.
Yes.
Motion adopted, 7-0.
Okay. Now I'll set the motion at this time.
Mr. Mayor,
Vice Mayor Pullman.
motion that with the exception of the items so noted, council received the reports of the consent agenda and concur on the recommendations.
Second.
Motion by Vice Mayor Pullman, second by Councilmember Vaughn. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion is carried. 6:58. We come out of that section and go into the public hearing. Now I'll set the motion that the regular meeting be recessed and the public hearing take place.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Vaughn, second by Councilmember Ryan. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion is carried, and it's 6:58. So we now go to the public hearing. If you read that into the record, please, sir.
A public hearing regarding a rezoning request for 7551 Gateway Avenue from R4 multifamily residence to RPD residential plan development, and approving a preliminary plan development plan for a 4-story single senior living apartment building, 244 dwelling units proposed with 5 variances to Hamilton zoning ordinance.
Anyone in the audience wish to be heard at this public hearing involving this request to go from R4 to RPD with the 5 variances?
Good evening again. Based on some questions that I have gotten, I was requested to do a supplementary presentation in addition to the caucus agenda presentation that you all heard last meeting. So this is mostly just a summary of a memo that I sent to you all last week. But so again, this is an image of the proposed project on 7551 Gateway, and it's a rezoning proposal.
Oh, sure.
Thank you. So had some questions to discuss a little bit more about the density variance that was requested. It is 244 dwelling units, and permitted by right in the zoning district, it would be 147 dwelling units. So that's a variance of 97 dwelling units. What I said last time was, its permitted density is 11 dwelling units per acre, and the requested density is 18 units per acre. I know those are a lot of numbers. The surrounding density, for context, is there is a single-family development, Woods of Sycamore Creek nearby, that has a density of 3.5 dwelling units per acre. And then there are a number of multifamily developments in the surrounding area that range from 9 to 12 dwelling units per acre. Staff did review recent years' projects that have gone to Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals and were unable to find a similar density variance requested. And somebody had asked about Water Cove, the project that the PLK is proposing on Water Cove that was approved recently, because it's actually more dwelling units. It's 272 dwelling units, but there is a much larger acreage, so they did not need a density variance. Their density is 12 dwelling units per acre. The other question that I had gotten at council last time was about payments for EMS services, and if they were not paid, it would go through a collections agency. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions? That density information is kind of caught my eye and concerned both. That's quite a difference than what's permitted.
Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Pullman.
Liz, so the one variance is the density, the dwelling units. And there's 5 variants. Can you summarize?
There's a height variance. There is an EV charging station variance. There's a number of parking. They don't have the right amount of parking units. They have less parking proposed than what the code permits, and then I will have to look at my notes on the 5th one. I'm blanking on that. But the applicants are here and ready to present and answer questions as well. Sorry.
Okay.
They might know the answer offhand. But sorry, did you have a question for me?
No, that was kind of the question. I want to find out what the 5 variances, why we have so many variances on one project. Well, I guess the question for you is, on projects of this size, what is it, normally 1 or 2 variances on it? Or, I mean, isn't it kind of odd that we see 5 variances on one project like this?
Sometimes we see, it is unusual to see that many variants, but sometimes there is numerous variances if our code just hasn't contemplated something. So in this case, it's the thing that I looked into more detail is not necessarily about the number of variances, but the scale of one particular variance, if that makes sense.
So what about is this a question we ask for them about the parking? What's the issue with the parking? How many?
I don't have the numbers offhand, but they are required to have 1.5 parking spaces per unit, and they do not meet that. They have shown a way that they could meet that if required, but that would impact their site design, amenity, and also possibly their lot coverage. So there's kind of some give and take there on the parking.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Fair.
So Liz, you said that for any EMS runs that are not paid to the city, then the city has to go to collection to get it?
Yes, if they did not pay them. That's a worst case scenario.
Okay, well, it depends on how many runs. I mean, is this what is the, strike that, never mind.
From a zoning perspective, it is really about the density. It is, we can't, sometimes people want to ask questions at Planning Commission about whether something's rental or owner occupied or, who's going to live there. Zoning can't contemplate that. It's about the density.
So has planning changed their recommendation on this?
We don't make a recommendation.
We get to do that.
The staff does not make recommendations. We had in the past, but we, for a number of years, have not been. So that, we just lay out the information for decision makers.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Mayor. Have
Vice
one
Mayor
more.
Pullman, please.
All right, here's the tough question. We've got a height variance. If we drop the top floor off of this, how many of these variances go away? That they need?
Yeah, right. Absolutely. That's the kind of thought process that you could have about, you know, if there was 147 dwelling units
Then everything
reconfigured, it
falls
would be
into place.
different. Yeah.
Woods of Sycamore Creek, is that the residential?
Is Woods of Sycamore Creek the single-family
Right.
like subdivision off of Tylersville? Yes. That they are part of the, you know, when I showed you on the map last time, the project actually is proposed on part of their property, and then they would move their playground to another part of the, there happens to be multiple vacant parcels there in that area.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Aaron's here. Just 1 second. Anyone else in the audience wish to be heard at this public hearing? We got some folks coming up here. If you'll state your name for the record, address, and contact information.
Yeah, so Mayor and Council, thanks so much for allowing us the opportunity to speak. My name is Sarah Shambrook. I work for Dominium, which is the developer, the applicant on this deal. I live in Phoenix, so I appreciate that it's not as cold as I thought it was going to be when I came out here today. So appreciate that, and also appreciate you all being here on Valentine's Day. I'm sure folks had maybe some other plans, but we appreciate everyone's time. So I'm going to go through this really quickly. First of all, thanks to Liz, thanks to all the staff that has been working on this. This is an interesting thing that we're doing here, that we're proposing here. And so I'm more than happy to answer some of the questions. I know density is one of the concerns that has already been brought up, so we're very prepared to talk about why that is and why this is kind of a creative situation. So really quickly, just about Dominium. Dominium's an affordable housing developer. So this is going to be affordable for seniors, 55 plus. And affordable is really a defined term at the federal level. We do not get to set our rents where we want them. We ultimately enter into a program that offers financing for the construction of the property, which then residents are able to live there at affordable rents. They're still paying their rents. It's different than the Section 8 program that you might have heard of, but ultimately residents are getting a reduced rent as kind of a benefit to the residents and the community. So Dominium, like I said, we're a national affordable housing developer. We have roughly 40,000 units across the country, and on any given day are housing between 70,000 to 100,000 folks. Our portfolio is senior, as well as workforce, family, new construction, and then also rehabilitation of existing affordable housing. So really quickly, I'll go through this, but one thing that kind of sets Dominium apart is that we're long-term owner managers. So this property will be deed restricted to be affordable for 30 years, and Dominium will own and manage that property. So we have on-site community management, on-site property management. We're kind of fully in-house, all owner, manager, developer. And one, just real quickly, one thing that allows us to do is really get involved in the community. So we do quite a bit of community give back. We do recommend that our employees volunteer in the community because they're usually members of the community where they work, and we really focus on that. But I'm not going to take too much time to talk about it because I want to get to the questions y'all have. So this is just an example of our portfolio footprint across the country, and then moving on to Ohio specifically, we have roughly 441 units here in the greater Cincinnati area with around 1,200 residents currently. This would be our first property in Hamilton. This is an example of the folks we house, and I put this up here because there's sometimes concern or miscommunication or misunderstanding of who they are. Our typical senior resident is 69 years old, usually female, and typically someone who's retired, has enough money on a fixed income to pay an affordable rent, but does not have enough money in areas where the market or the housing market has kind of increased, which is what we've seen in Greater Cincinnati and here in Hamilton. So this is an example. That is an actual resident of ours, but this is not her name. But she, like I said, an example of, you know, an annual income based on Social Security and pension, and then kind of those income limits and rents that we do not set. Those are set by the Ohio Housing Department. So just an example of why this is so necessary. You know, I'm sure folks have felt it in their own bank accounts, but inflation was mentioned earlier. That really, really impacts the housing market. Right now, about a quarter of Butler County's residents are over 55 plus, and kind of that number is similar in the entirety of Ohio's population. Folks are being priced out, and the biggest statistic is that kind of average Social Security monthly payments in Ohio are roughly $1,400, or a little over $1,400, and the average one bedroom is $1,404. So that's really leaving only $90 of, you know, income to be used on anything other than housing. That's a huge, huge cost burden that's happening for folks right now, and something that this type of housing can alleviate. So the proposal overview, this is, I'm sure, what Liz was referring to last time, but the red parcel is really what we initially got under contract to start looking at the area and seeing what some possibilities might be. After doing some kind of additional thought process there, we realized the yellow parcel was kind of vacant other than the Woods at Sycamore Creek Neighborhood Park, which is an older park. It's a little bit outdated, and there has been some kind of security issues that we heard from the neighborhood and the HOA of the adjacent apartment buildings, you know, kind of finding a pathway into that park to potentially go there and do whatever in the evening. So what we kind of went to the HOA with, and what we've been working with the community on for the past roughly year, is we would ultimately combine those red and yellow parcels to create kind of one larger parcel. And then in exchange for us essentially purchasing the parcel from the neighborhood park, that would allow the neighborhood to purchase what you see on the left, that blue parcel, and we would kind of, as a community benefit agreement with the neighborhood, build them a new park. That helps a few things. You'll see the blue parcel, the access to the blue parcel really goes in through the neighborhood. So there has been concern in years past from neighbors about that being developed as it's actively available. And then the access point going through their neighborhood, which would create quite a bit of traffic congestion. So we see this as kind of a solution to a few problems, and that's what we've been working with the residents on for a while. Like I mentioned, we've been in communication with the HOA board for about a year. We held 2 neighborhood meetings with the neighborhood. We went door to door, canvassed folks, talked through what our proposal was. We held kind of a community, brunch neighborhood meeting at the park with folks, got a lot of feedback on what people were looking for, and ultimately came to kind of this project recommendation. And then we did enter into a vote with the HOA members, and we have an overwhelming majority in favor of this idea. So we're pretty excited about that, and we'd really like to be able to move forward on some of the creative solutions we've come up with the neighbors. So the preliminary site plan looks like this. This is, again, a preliminary site plan, but we're talking about 244 units, 4 stories, kind of on both of those parcels. The thing I want to point out on this preliminary site plan that you can see really well is kind of in the middle of the plan towards the bottom, you see a very large buffer of trees and foliage. That's existing right now surrounding the park, and something extremely important to neighbors was that remained. One of the biggest reasons is so that their views aren't changed, so that it's still kind of that natural foliage. And we have figured out a way to keep quite a bit of that if we reduce the parking. So that is one of the variances, the parking. What we showed to staff is we're able to put all of the parking stalls that are necessary in the code, but we would have to remove some of that foliage, and that was something that neighbors didn't want to happen, and also the Planning and Zoning Commission specifically talked about as well. You've already seen this rendering in Liz's presentation, so I'm going to move on there. But the only thing I will say is we're more than open to design aesthetics from the city's perspective as we go through kind of the site plan approval at a later date. This is not a rendering, this is an actual property of ours. So I like to show these just so you can see kind of the quality of our properties. You really cannot tell the difference between market rate and affordable housing when they're built utilizing this program. And it's really, really important to Dominium, especially as long-term owner managers, to provide dignified home for our residents. We don't think folks should have to live somewhere that's not, up to quality and dignity just because of their income or lack of retirement. So that's a very important part of our builds and our construction and our management. These are some of the amenities that we provide, quite a bit of community amenities, a lot of outdoor space, a lot of, just green space, areas that folks can gather, fitness centers, picnic and grill areas. Another thing to mention here is this is not assisted living. This is not, apartments where folks are going when they have major medical issues. This is ultimately just a 55+ community of folks who have been priced out of the market and are paying their rent. This does not seem to be working anymore. Okay, you can move on to that one. That's just more photos of the community amenities. And just some resident benefits. This kind of happens naturally with our management staff, but especially in our senior properties, we have quite a bit of things that we like to do. We like to partner with local health providers, local, dentist's office, local fire department, all of that, teach classes and help folks remain involved in the community as best as possible. Next, I want to talk about the development investment that would be made with this project. The biggest thing is the kind of $54 million construction cost and investment that would be coming to the city of Hamilton. We're also looking at roughly 354 jobs. 350 of those would be full-time equivalent during the 24-month construction period, and then 4 full-time on-site jobs, like I said, for the entirety of the 30-year deed-restricted affordability. And then that economic stimulus piece I'm going to talk about here. So our rent, which is set, like I said, by the department, the state agency here in Ohio, varies from market rent quite a bit. And what that shows us is an annual resident savings of folks that are already paying more than they can afford here in Hamilton. So this is a potential annual economic stimulus accounting for kind of the resident savings in rent of roughly $1.03 million annually. I call it a potential annual economic stimulus because there's no guarantee that they're going to spend that in the community, but that is, generally what is seen from kind of an economic perspective and what we see at our properties once they're built. So getting into the density conversation, to answer a few questions that were asked previously, why are we proposing a density that's over 7 units per acre of the permitted code and not something that the city has seen? The biggest reason is because in order to make these properties and these communities financially feasible for 30 years of modeling based on the lowered rents that we are required to follow, we have to be able to make some cost-cutting measures somewhere, and then we also need a certain number of units to be able to make that financially feasible. 244 happened to be kind of that magic number when you put in all of the things that we want to include in the site plan. So the amenity space that's really important to our residents, the green space, we believe to be adequate parking. And then the biggest thing is senior mobility. We move seniors up and down instead of across the entire acreage of the parcel for mobility purposes. It's a lot easier for our residents, we have learned over the 50 years that we've been in business, to park closer to the building and then go into the hallway, move up and down if there's any type of mobility issues, as opposed to walking much further across a larger kind of span. So we shrink the footprint, which ultimately is why the density is so high. So when you saw the kind of example that was given by staff, there is another property, at least in Hamilton, I'm sure there's others, that are more than 244 units. Their density is lower because they're spreading their property over larger acreage. We're shrinking our property and shrinking the footprint because of the folks that we believe are going to live there, and also because we want to make sure there's enough amenity space, green space, and we're trying to save that tree buffer. So hopefully that kind of helps answer some of the density questions, but also happy to continue to answer those. There was also a question last time about financing. How is this financed? So just wanted to put that out there completely for you. It's financed using the Affordable Housing 4% tax credit, which is issued by the Ohio State Agency, as well as private activity bonds. None of that money comes from the city. None of that money comes from city taxpayers. All of that is a tax credit program that essentially incentivizes private equity investment into this public necessity of affordable housing. So essentially, you can think about it as subsidizing construction with investment of a tax credit, and then our residents ultimately pay their rent. Then the rest would be a conventional construction loan and Freddie Mac permanent financing. Last question is the emergency services condition. So this is not something that we necessarily want to hang our hats on and say we're not doing it. We just have had continued conversations with the city, and our biggest concern right now in not doing that, not paying back these EMS costs, I believe it's over 20 stops, is that we don't have exact numbers. It's not kind of fully figured out yet. And that makes it really, really tough for us to go to investors to buy the tax credits. When they're looking at a model of 30 years, they're looking at risk, they're looking at trying to mitigate any of their risk. And it makes it really tough for us to say, well, there's this kind of interesting thing we need to work out and do. And so ultimately, we're just not ready to commit to saying we can do that as part of this project, but we're more than happy to continue those conversations with the city and try to figure out what exact data points are pointing towards this, what, if there's any examples we can utilize, that type of thing. We just have not gotten that quite yet. And so that's kind of there. We also are a little concerned about an arbitrary limit on our residents utilizing emergency services. I know that's not the city's intent whatsoever. They've made that very clear. But that I do see that as a potential after effect of we wouldn't in any way kind of charge our residents more. We wouldn't be allowed to, but I'm concerned about how that might work over the span of 30 years if that were to become kind of outrageously out of control. So that's my presentation. I'm here to answer questions. We've also got our architect, our engineers, and our civil and development team here if there are any additional questions.
Any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Vaughn.
are there amenities that they would have to pay for, anything within the complex?
Yeah, great question. So no, I don't believe, and I can have Sam answer this question, that we're offering any type of garages or, so sometimes in Arizona specifically, we offer carports with solar panels on top, not something we're looking at here, and that can be an upgraded cost. But no, all of the amenities are included in the rent costs. And the rent that you saw was actually not the total rent that we could charge. The total rent we could charge on a one-bedroom is around $11.97 here in Ohio, but we give the residents a utility credit so that they're not paying more than that $11.97. Their rent is reduced so that they can make that up with the utilities that they might have to purchase.
Okay, and that was sort of my other question, like internet, is there anything that comes with it? Is there an HOA or a fee?
There is internet in the community spaces. So all of the community spaces, the community club room, there's typically a movie theater in every property, a business center, a library. All of those spaces will have access to Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi from the community, but individual internet in their homes is part of that utility allowance that would have to be paid for by residents.
Okay, and then last question, I assume no children. I mean, I
Correct.
see 3 bedrooms, but they may use bedrooms for some other reason.
So yes, so that's not actually a condition of the federal program, but Dominium personally, or professionally, I guess, our condition is for a 55 plus community, it's 55, one person has to be 55 and everyone else has to be 40 years old in the household.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? I was on the planning commission when you first brought this to us, and I liked the idea because I think there's a need for affordable senior housing. I was glad to see that it was owner managed. That was a big thing on my list. 4 stories. How tall is the buffer? I mean, are the trees 4 stories tall?
That's a great question, and I think either architect or civil might have those answers. What we did is kind of, and I don't think we have them in the presentation, but we did for the neighbors that are right there on the tree line who had some of the biggest concerns as we were walking through things, we kind of created a rendering, I guess you could call it, of what the building would look like behind the trees should they stay. And I believe it went over the trees in some areas by about 1 foot. Is that accurate? Yeah, roughly 1 foot. So the trees covered pretty much all the building except for in one specific area. I wish we had that, and we can probably get it and put it up. I just didn't put it in the presentation, by about 1 foot. So the trees really do cover that. The 4 stories, again, is really important to the ability to move seniors up and down. Our hallways are, in our senior properties, allow for 2 wheelchairs to go back and forth. So that's something that is extremely important for what we've learned for the residents that we house in our senior portfolio.
Okay. Any other questions? So officially, anyone on, did Sam, I got a Sam, did he want to speak at all? Okay.
Just part of our development team.
Okay. Two people did sign the book, Sarah and Sam, from Dominium.
Dominium, it's like condominium without the con, yeah. Not to be confused with Dominion, so.
Okay. Anyone else on council at this time wish to make a comment or wish to make a motion at this time?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Nab.
I'll move that the hearing be closed.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Nab, seconded by Vice Mayor Pullman. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none. That motion is carried at 7:26. I'll set the motion to regular meeting be reconvened.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Pullman, seconded by Councilmember Ryan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none. The motion is carried at 7:26. Now go to council actions pertaining to legislative items. Now I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Nab.
I move that a note be made upon the minutes that each member of council was furnished a printed copy of each item of legislation prior to its being considered at this meeting.
I'll second.
Motion made by Councilmember Nab, seconded by Vice Mayor Pullman. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And that motion is carried at 7:27. We now go to pending legislation. Agenda item number 9, second reading of emergency ordinance involving a negotiated agreement involving a union.
An emergency ordinance amending and supplementing Schedule E of the city's classification and compensation plan as set forth in the negotiated agreement between the City of Hamilton and Ohio Council 8 of the American Federation of Federal, State, County, and Municipal Employees, Local 475, AFL-CIO, executed April 19th, 2022, to add the Public Works Sign Shop Maintenance Workers Classifications 1, 2, and 3, and authorizing the city manager to execute a memorandum of agreement with said union. Second reading.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Vaughn.
I move the ordinance be adopted.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Vaughn, second by Councilmember Fear. Any discussion or comment on this one? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Moeller.
Yes.
Pullman.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Fear.
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
Nab.
Yes.
Lauer.
Yes.
Ordinance adopted, 7-0.
Go to agenda item number 10, second reading of emergency ordinance involving the sale of a cell phone tower located at Potters Park Golf Course.
An emergency ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to execute an option agreement with Propco Wireless LLC to sell a communications easement relative to a cell phone tower located at Potters Park Golf Course, 417 New London Road, Hamilton, Ohio. Second reading.
Mayor.
Councilmember Nab.
I move the ordinance be adopted.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Nab, second by Councilmember Ryan. Comments, questions on this one? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Moeller.
Yes.
Pullman.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Fear.
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
Nab.
Yes.
Lauer.
Yes.
Ordinance adopted, 7-0.
Go to agenda item number 11, second reading of emergency ordinance involving a termination agreement.
An emergency ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to execute a termination agreement and related actions with Great Miami Brewing Real Estate Holdings LLC related to certain real property at 514 Maple Avenue, Hamilton, Ohio, 45011. Second reading.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember or Vice Mayor Pullman.
make a motion that the ordinance be adopted.
Second.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Pullman, seconded by Councilmember Bond. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Moeller.
Yes.
Pullman.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Fear.
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
Nab.
Yes.
Lauer.
Yes.
Ordinance adopted, 7-0.
Go to agenda item number 12 under new legislation. Two readings of emergency ordinance involving a newly established classification of assistant police chief.
An emergency ordinance amending emergency ordinance number EOR 2024-1-3 by amending and correcting the classification code established in section 1 of said emergency ordinance for the newly established classification of assistant police chief, first of two readings.
Mayor,
Now, Vice Mayor Pullman.
make a motion that the rules be suspended and said ordinance be read a second time by its title.
Second.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Pullman, seconded by Councilmember Vaughn. Roll call vote on that motion, please.
Moeller,
Yes?
Pullman,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Fear,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Nab,
Yes.
Lauer.
Yes.
Motion adopted, 7-0.
Second reading of the emergency ordinance, please.
An emergency ordinance amending emergency ordinance number EOR 2024-1-3 by amending and correcting the classification code established in Section 1 of said emergency ordinance for the newly established classification of Assistant Police Chief, second reading.
Mr. Mayor,
Vice Mayor Pullman.
make a motion that the ordinance be adopted.
Second.
Motion by Vice Mayor Pullman, seconded by Councilmember Vaughn. Comments, questions on this? Okay, roll call vote.
Moeller,
Yes?
Pullman,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Fear,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Nab,
Yes.
Lauer.
Yes.
Ordinance adopted, 7-0.
We go to agenda item number 13, first reading of emergency ordinance involving hydrant use policy.
An emergency ordinance amending the City of Hamilton's codified ordinance section numbers 939.04A and B and 939.15A to reflect current costs of labor, equipment, and material, and updating hydrant use policy, first reading.
Agenda item number 14 is the first reading of emergency ordinance involving the classification title administrative coordinator.
An emergency ordinance amending and supplementing Schedule A of the city's classification compensation plan as set forth in emergency ordinance number EOR 2023-12-106, adopted December 13th, 2023, amended from time to time by changing the administrative secretary classification title to administrative coordinator and updating job functions for the position. First reading.
Thank you. We go to agenda item number 15, first reading of an ordinance involving development agreement, Durana Hybrid.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to execute a development agreement and related actions with Durana Hybrid developer located at 903 Bell Avenue, first reading.
Here we go to agenda item number 16, first reading of an ordinance involving rezoning request, Minium.
An ordinance approving a rezoning request for 7551 Gateway Avenue from R4 multifamily residence to RPD residential plan development, and a preliminary planned development approval to allow senior living apartment, 4-story building, 244 dwelling units proposed, with 5 variances to the Hamilton zoning ordinance HZO. Ryan Lunderby, Dominium Incorporated applicant, first reading.
Here we go to agenda item number 17. There's a resolution, grant application.
Sure. I'll read this into the record, but we do have Alan Messer of the engineering department who would like to do a presentation on this item, if that's okay.
Great, thank you.
So I'll read this real quick. A resolution authorizing a grant application to the U.S. Department of Transportation, USDOT, for Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity RAISE grant for fiscal year 2024 for North Hamilton Crossing. Somewhere.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'll make it as brief as possible because I know we all want to get out here on Valentine's Day. Thank you for letting me speak to you here for a moment.
You're welcome.
You're all very familiar with the project, with the various components of it. One of them that tends to get lost in the overall project that I'll highlight is the quiet zone, which is partly a product of we're already dealing with the railroad, eliminating some rail crossings, creating an overpass, which naturally mitigates some of that. And the quiet zone itself would mitigate some of the increased or transferred traffic noise due to traffic shifting to the new roadway from the existing roadways that it is today. This is a section, essentially what goes through the north end is the railroad overpass. If it weren't for the railroad overpass, there wouldn't be much discussion about even having a roadway through the north end. But today we have the High Street underpass, we have South Hamlin Crossing, we don't have an overpass on the north side of town. So that's what this is. The two options that you see here are two that were presented at the North End meeting last month. We talked briefly about some of the existing railroad crossing closures. One that's little known is Vine Street is still in the books, even though there's fences across it. I asked the question to the state and to CSX, can we get credit for that since it still shows up? And the short answer is yes. We don't get a lot of credit because there's not traffic traveling over it, but we're committing to closing that. We've talked at length about Butler Street in the past. We talked briefly at the North End meeting about Heaton Street. And I wanted to get the reaction before going too much further exploring that from you. I'm not looking to put, there's nothing in the resolution that speaks to we're committing to closing Heaton Street, but I did want to get your reaction. And how that evolved was, is you start looking particularly at that orange option there, which is Heaton Street over, still crossing up at Vine Street. There's not going to be much traffic left on Heaton Street. Recently, the state of Ohio issued a new way of ranking rail crossings across the state. Looked into that ranking, and Heaton Street, as far as their risk ranking, had the highest ranking in southern Ohio, meaning that not necessarily that it's unsafe, but that there's a high likelihood that something could happen there. And that's based on number of trains, number of vehicles, and number of crashes that have occurred there, which there have been some. Most recently, I think 2 in 2019, where there were 2 separate crashes, 2 separate injuries. That is something that's very compelling as we apply for this RAISE grant, as we get into other grants that will be approaching you for in the next couple months for the Federal Rail Administration. It's something that somebody in Washington, we can say to them, we're looking to close the highest risk rating crossing in southern Ohio, and that's something that they can wrap their heads around. It's not something, if you asked anybody, would you be in favor of closing Heaton Street? I wouldn't be in favor of that if you had it as a standalone question. I did talk to Executive Director Skermese. I talked to both the fire and the police chief about this to see if they had any reservations before taking it any further. That's really what I'm here for today, is just to plant that seed in your head, see if you have any questions at this time. Just building on the quiet zone, the crossings that would be left, that would be a part of that quiet zone, would be Ludlow, Maple, Dayton, and then of course the crossings that would be closed, there'd be no need for train noises at those anymore. And we might we're exploring the water plant, if that one could also be rolled into that same quiet zone. This is the funding, just a recap on where we are. We've done pretty well with grants so far. We're honestly pursuing any grant that we feel like we have a reasonable shot of getting. By reasonable, I say maybe 1 in 10, because we might put $5,000 worth of staff time into filling out one of these applications, have a 1 in 10 chance of getting $1 million or more. And it's worth taking that chance every time. But with that, I'd like to open it up if there's any questions. If not, ponder on it, and we'll explore it further in the future.
Question, I think many of us were at the North Hamilton Crossing meeting. I don't really recall how well Heaton was received, but it was discussed. And I don't think I heard a loud objection, but did you sense anything at all?
I did not. Somebody asked the question, could it be closed to traffic, but not like left open to pedestrians? The short answer to that is no. If you look at, reason being, we don't get credit for that because it's still a crossing in the minds of the regulators. And Butler Street, there was a fatality, and that fatality was a pedestrian, somebody that a train passed, they were waiting on the train to pass. They went after it passed. Unfortunately, there was one coming the other direction.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Knapp.
Alan, in our meetings, the Cornelight Corporation on Heaton Street has been kind of partnering and to understand what any potential movement of vehicles and things like that mean. Have we been in touch with them as well recently?
Yes, we've been working very closely with them, and that orange route actually shifted a little further north in response to what their needs are for being able to turn around there. So we've kind of generically called this the Vine Street crossing. It's about a half a block to a block north of where Vine Street used to be.
But thank you. We wanted to comment too, is we've learned for a multitude of reasons, we really like grants a lot. So thanks for going after those monies.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Alan. I think you've already read it. Is that correct, Mr. Clerk?
That's correct, sir.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember
I
Nab.
move the resolution be adopted.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Nab, seconded by Councilmember Ryan. Any further discussion or comments on this one? Okay, hearing none. Roll call vote.
Moeller.
Yes.
Pullman.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Fear.
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
Nab.
Yes.
Lauer.
Yes.
Resolution adopted, 7-0.
To agenda item number 18, a resolution involving Angela Jarrett and the Hamilton Civil Service Commission.
Mr. Mayor,
Ooh, yes.
I move the resolution be adopted. Oh, I'm sorry, I did it before you read it. I'm excited about Angela.
I'll read it real quick. A resolution appointing Angela Jarrett to serve on the City of Hamilton Civil Service Commission for the term commencing January 1st, 2024, and terminating December 31st, 2027.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Vaughn.
I move the resolution be adopted.
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Vaughn, and I think it was seconded by Councilmember Lauer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion or comment? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Moeller.
Yes.
Pullman.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Fear.
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
Nab.
Yes.
Lauer.
Yes.
Resolution adopted, 7-0.
City Manager?
Nothing.
Nothing. Audience of City Council.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Lauer.
I had the privilege of attending the Hamilton High School Athletic Hall of Fame. I want to mention these 10 names. Timmy Anderson graduated 86 with basketball. Kelly Connaughton, 94 with volleyball and basketball. Tom Ferris, 67, football and basketball. Charlie Hatcher, football and track. Kate Henry, played in the state championship. Kate Henry, 04. Basketball, soccer, softball. Keith Jones, 85 for diving. Travis Fitton Kinch, she graduated in 1977, tennis, swimming, and diving. Steve Matthews, 1965, football, basketball, and baseball. Jim Smith, 1941, and also served in North Africa, which that was quite a story. And then last but not least was Tim Rooking. He had some pretty big events that went on in his career. He beat Greg Fry when he played for when Greg Fry played for St. X, who later went on to Ohio State. And then he also, in the bottom of the seventh, hit a grand slam to win the GMC championship in the final at bat. They walked Mark Lewis to get to him. So, it was a nice event put on by Missy Harvey. It was a great evening.
Did you say they walked Mark Lewis or Dave Jones?
He's next on the list. Going in.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Nab.
We recognize many members of 17 Strong were here tonight. Angela Jarrett is also a member, but if we move to the Youth Commission of 17 Strong, on February 29th, the youth at Hamilton High School are going to have a cell phone technology 101 training session for seniors from the Fitton Family Y that have signed up now. We'll do a lunch and learn program for the seniors at the high that are going to join us over at the high school. Right now we have 12 people signed up, and we have 12 youth to be able to assist them to understand that this is more than a bookmark, it's more than a paperweight, and turning it on and some of the activities that can be accomplished. And many seniors struggle with the cell phone technology what the uses are and things. So we're going to spend about an hour together, and we hope that the students develop a relationship. There's a video on YouTube right now of youth down in Fort Myers, Florida, that have this once a month for seniors in communities down there to be able to understand more cell phone technology. It's something we all carry, and there are hundreds of uses for it. Most adults get 5 or 6 uses, is what the platform tells them. So we hope that the students from 17 Strong will have a good meeting with them. We might be able to do that monthly and have the adults come over, join them for lunch, and then get on with the training program. So another outreach from our 17 Strong team.
First off, Councilmember Nab, I'm not a senior, but I need a 3-day conference. I need a 3-day
overnight.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
It was killing me over.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
I know that.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, it's true.
I want to report on self.
Please.
A great board that I'm on, and their annual awards and silent auction is on Friday, April 26th at the receptions in Fairfield at 6 p.m. And their theme this year is rodeo, which I am all excited about because I get my boots out and my hat now. So it is a great, wait till you see that. But it's a great event every year, and they've got, I think, 5 nominees this year for their Volunteer of the Year, which is tremendous. They got great silent auction. It's a good fundraiser. Again, I recommend everybody to go because this raises money for a great organization that helps and it supports and encourages lower income families. They do a lot of great things. It's my favorite board to be on. So again, mark your calendars, April 26th. You can go to self and helps.org and go to celebration, and you can get your tickets there. And I don't know, maybe we'll all get a table, we'll see. But great event. Please mark your calendars and try to get there. So.
Anyone else? I want to thank 2 people I don't even know. I was turning right from Pyramid Hill Boulevard onto Columbia Road, and there's 2 people who I don't know, but I bet you they live in the neighborhood. They're picking up litter, going up that hill on both sides. It was a couple. And that just said, geez, I was thinking about doing it, but I didn't do it. But these other 2 people did it. And I was just so pleased to see that stepping up. And I think that's contagious. So they beat me to it, but my God, it was a vision that I'm going, we get it. We really get it. And lastly, happy Valentine's Day. So. All right. Anything else from council? Okay. Mr. City Manager, we go into executive session?
Yes, for 2 different purposes. The first is to consider the appointment, employment, promotion, or compensation of a public employee or official. The second is to confer with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are the subject of pending or imminent court action.
Okay. Is there a motion that council go into executive session for those stated purposes by the city manager?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Pullman, seconded by Councilmember Vaughn. Roll call vote to go into executive session for that.
Moeller,
Yes.
Pullman,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Fear,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Nab,
Yes.
Lauer.
Yes.
Motion adopted, 7-0.
Okay, we're going to executive session at 7:49. We'll come out of executive session just to adjourn the regular meeting. Thank you all for being here.